we've got a guest, and I've been looking forward to this since we started Nothing Personal. Because if you have a chance to speak to the senior writer for The Athletic, that's number one. Number two, MLB on Fox field reporter. Number three, insider for Foul Territory TV. Check that out as well. I'm talking about Ken Rosenthal, someone I've known since my first day in baseball, which I don't know if Ken will remember back when I was with the Expos. Ken Rosenthal, welcome to Nothing Personal.
David, thank you very much. I'm honored to be here.
It is good to have you. I know it's a busy time of year. The trade deadline is about a month and a half away. There's so much I want to cover, so much going on in baseball, trying to get the NBA Finals done and the Stanley Cup done so the focus can solely be on our sport. I wanted to just start with the trade deadline because you obviously, please make sure you're reading Ken's columns that come out every day, seemingly. It really is every day, both with notes and deep dives. I just talked about you, Ken. In the first
Uh-oh.
hour, we were talking about Mike Fiers,
Okay.
your guy. And what would have happened if John Carlos Stanton had allowed us to trade for Mike Fiers? I listed it as the only example in my career where I went to a player before making a trade, and John Carlos said, "Do not trade for him. I will not have him in my clubhouse. I just won't do it." And we granted him that wish. And I believe after he ended up being in Houston, which made him a whistleblower, which you were a part of with Evan Drellick.
Okay. First of all, the Stanton thing, that was before the Houston story. That's what you're
Yes, he
saying?
got hit
Okay.
in Milwaukee before we signed him to that $325 million deal when he had not faced live pitching since he got hit in the face.
I see. All right. With Fires, that story would have run anyway, without him, I should say. And the reason for that is we had it. Now, when we had him on the record, then it became a much more effective story. As with all stories, if you have people on the record, and David, you know this because you were off the record all those years as Marlins president, but when people are on the record putting their name to something, it makes something that much stronger. So I believe I would say 95% certain that story would have run without Fires. It just became that much better once we had him confirming what we were about to report, which was the Astros were using an advanced system, an illegal system, to steal signs electronically.
Were you going after players to go on the record? And was there a deadline that was set by you in your mind? And then did he come in like right under the deadline? How did that work?
I wouldn't say there was a deadline for it, but was I calling players and trying to find one to go on the record? The answer to that is yes.
And you was he the last what? So we weren't even going to talk about this. I'm sorry, but it just came up. Once you get a player on the record, do you stop? Do you try to get a second, or do you say, "Hey, I can't believe we got one. We're ready to go now"?
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and this is 6 years ago now, Fires was about at the end of the list. We had exhausted the list, and I had struck out. Evan had struck out. We had not gotten anybody to go on the record. And I don't know how many players were left on our list, but once we had him, in this case, that was enough because we had all of the other information and we had it confirmed by multiple sources. We just didn't have anyone on the record. So it wasn't like we needed a second person on the record. If we had had one, great. But if I recall correctly, we had pretty much exhausted the list.
I'd have to believe in your career that that's got to be. Is that not the number one story that you've been a part of?
I would say yes. And the funny story behind that, David, is that at the time, my co-writer and really the guy who drove the story, Evan Drellick, my name is on it with his, and that's proper, that's fine. But Evan knew about this for a year before he came to the Athletic, just could not nail it down. And then once we got together, we combined to nail it down. But the day it came out, we were at the GM meetings, and it was in Phoenix, Arizona, Scottsdale, I should say. And Evan said to me, turned to me, and he said, "This will be the biggest story I ever break." And I looked at him and I said, "What are you talking about? There'll be a bigger story to come along next week. We'll get another one." And I, in my head, because we had worked so hard to get it to the finish line, did not realize the magnitude of it. Odd as that sounds, there had been other hints of this scheme that the Astros were doing, nothing like along the lines of what we had had, but there were pieces of it kind of coming out. And I saw our story as the culmination, the one story that put the pieces together. But what I failed to realize was it really had this monumental impact on the sport because it led to rules changes and it led to hopefully a different culture. It definitely did. And at the time, in the moment, I did not realize it.
So I'm surprised. I want to move on to this trade deadline that's coming up, but I just want to put a bow on that. That the impact of that story is it's felt today inside Major League Baseball. It's felt today inside clubhouses. There's still players around who are a part of it. There's still a question of the impact it will have as Hall of Fame votes start
Sure.
happening with certain players. And so you're still in the fourth inning of this story. So think about when Altuve, by the way, comes for a
Yes.
vote, you're going to be called on to talk about this and what impact it will have because seemingly he'd be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but for the possibility that of buzzers and garbage cans.
Well, I will tell you one story about the buzzers since you bring it up. And I've brought this up on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it before. But people say Ken knew after you hit that home run to ask the question, why did they grab your shirt? Why did they tear it off your body? Ken knew something was up. I had no idea something was up. I had a producer in my ear say, hey, ask him about the jersey coming off. Because in the truth of the matter, once he hit the home run, the one off Chapman, I did not look to see him cross home plate. I'm racing to get on the field. I'm trying in my head to prepare what I'm going to ask. I'm not watching. So I had no idea what was up. If not for the producer, I would not have asked the question.
I can't believe that it was Chapman, and I'm thinking back because Chapman is a conversation for now. Transition alert, Coca. Chapman is that a player you expect could be on the move?
No, I expect the Red Sox to get back in this thing. And I know they haven't played well. Another tough loss last night, but they've invested a lot in this season. This was to be the season they turned it around. And barring continued poor play, which is possible, I do not expect him to be on the move.
But when you look at how they're operated and who's operating, Craig Breslow in theory with Sam Kennedy and et cetera, he'd be the exact player who you would move.
Oh, no
And
question.
because you can get assets for him, he's not going to be on the roster next year, and he's having one of those seasons again out of nowhere at an advanced age.
That's true, David. But their window, if you want to call it that, is supposedly reopening. That was the promise of this season. Hey, we're going to start to mix in our young kids. We signed Alex Bregman. We traded for Garrett Crochet. They're not going to give up on this season easily, nor should they. Let's face it, Bregman might only be there this one year. And I know he's not there right now, he's injured, but the whole psychology of the club is go for it this year. Now, they're going to be realistic, of course. If they're out of it, and it's difficult to be out of it with the expanded postseason, then they'll make some other decisions. But again, I don't expect them to be in that position. I expect them to somehow right the ship here and play better.
I think that's what separates good front offices from bad ones, though, is recognizing that even in an expanded wild card, if you're dialing for a dream, you have to maximize assets, even if you're the Red Sox, who have shown to be conscious about what their payroll is and butting up against luxury tax threshold. If you can turn Chapman into a bit more and filling your pipeline again, I don't know. I think you have to do that for a bullpen arm. It's like your dream. When we would sign a bullpen arm to a 1 year deal like this, it's your dream that you can move him for something that it actually works out, assuming your dream of winning that year doesn't happen.
David, that's in a vacuum. I agree with you. But without being disrespectful here, it's one thing when you're the Miami Marlins and you're not facing fan and media pressure to the extent you are in Boston. They're under fan and media pressure. And I just don't know that they can give up on this season easily based on their disappointments the past several years, based on their investment in this club. Every circumstance is different. Every season is different for every team. And that's why it seems to me it's going to be tough to wrest Aroldis Chapman away from them.
So where are you going to add if you're the Red Sox? Because they brought up
First
Anthony,
base,
they played him in right field. What are you going to add?
first base for sure. And I would also look to add to the rotation, which has been a huge disappointment. Giolito has not pitched well. Bueller has not pitched well. Bio was good last night, but they need help in the rotation and always a bullpen arm too.
So do you think that they would take a chance? Do you think anyone will take a chance on Sandy? The Marlins back from Tommy John, Alcantara, Cy Young Award winner, pitching. Is he qualified yet, Coca? For the earn, remember there was a time when he would have had the worst ERA by like 3 runs, but he was 1 inning away from qualifying. Is that the type of arm? What do you do if you're the Marlins? Because I want to tell you what the front office is thinking. I want to hear your view.
It's June 10th. It's not July 31st. And I still expect Sandy to come around. That last start, he had a little bit of a different mix, more success. He pitches again tonight. I'm actually eager to see what he does tonight because he still is the belle of the ball as long as he is on an upward trend. He's not been on an upward trend this year. It's understandable to some degree. He's coming off surgery, but it's not too late for him to restore some value. Remember, we've seen circumstances over the last few years. I can't remember one, but circumstances where a guy has a few good starts and boom, he gets traded. So I can see that happening again.
How can you not be on an upward trend when your ERA is eight and a
Right.
half? Isn't it
Fair
almost
point. Well, you can
definitional?
stay on the same trend. You can have an ERA of eight and a
It's
half in a month.
impossible. And for him to be as bad as he was would seem improbable, though it is tough first year back from Tommy John. Strange that people just expect, like last night, a Marlins pitcher again. Your
Yes.
Perez comes back, and it's hard. You pitch 3 innings, and you're not going to be as effective. But if you're the Marlins, you've got to get this right because they're running out of assets. As a matter of fact, maybe they've run out of assets in order to try to hit it big. And if you're an acquiring team, I don't think you're going to give up for Sandy what you would have when you say he's the belle of the ball. I think there's a little tarnish on him now.
Oh, there's no question there is right now. And again, if this deadline was tomorrow, we're talking about a situation where they probably can't trade him just yet. They'd probably want to wait till the offseason and hope that things get better. But that in a shrinking window here is what they want to happen before July 31st. And if you can't make the absolute A1 trade for him, maybe you settle for less. And that is just the way it's going to be. But again, like so much with the deadline, this is all going to evolve. We're going to have sellers in 6 weeks that we don't have now. We're going to have teams willing to buy and sell that we are not necessarily aware of now. So I know people like to get talking about the deadline early, and we're talking just in a general sense, David, but people start throwing names around this time of year. It's still too early, in my opinion. And I've done this a long time now. I've done it long enough to know that things will change and they will change quickly and they will change right up until July 31st.
I'm sorry, but I thought on your site, which of course I'm a subscriber, as everyone should be to The Athletic, I'm almost positive that in April there were already articles about who to watch for at the deadline.
Not
So
by others.
I didn't say by you. I'm
Yeah.
just saying it's not that early. One of the teams, I guess, were you talking about the
So it is
Cardinals?
that early for reality. For fantasy, it's always a good time.
Were you thinking about the Cardinals when you were thinking about a team that if the deadline were today, they could be buyers, and by July 31st, they may have regressed to what people thought they would be?
They're a really interesting team right now, and there are so many dynamics going on with them. It's like I was saying before, David, there are different circumstances for every team, and you know this. So John Mozeliak, their president of baseball operations, is in his last year. He won't admit this. Of course, he's not going to admit this publicly. I think he wants to win. Who wouldn't want to win? Who wouldn't want to go out in the best possible way? That's one thing. The other thing is the surprise that they have become this season. And it's really interesting that they're getting 90th percentile outcomes on a lot of what they wanted, which is great and good for them. They did nothing in the offseason. And in some ways, it's kind of a bad example. It's a team that did nothing and is still having success. Maybe other teams will think the same way. But in their case, they had a lot of players that they wanted to look at. And that's what they've done. And those players, for the most part, not all of them, have succeeded. So at the deadline, they're a buyer if they continue this trend, yes. But how extensive a buyer are they? I don't know that it's that extensive. It seems to me that what they'll do is piecemeal ads, guys that should help them, but not monster type trades because Chaim Bloom, their next president of baseball operations, is part of the front office right now. And I can't imagine he wants to invest too many assets in going forward this season when he's going to be trying to build something that is sustainable for several years.
So a little scoop here is I was at a college graduation for my son, and Bill DeWitt was sitting right behind me because it was his granddaughter who was graduating as well. And we were talking. We hadn't seen each other in a bit. And he said to me, and I told him, well, that seems like something I could repeat on my show. And he smiled. He said, can't you be nicer to the Cardinals? I said, I'm so nice to them. I love St. Louis. And I felt like you. I felt like me talking to you for 18 years. Can't you be nicer to the Marlins? It made me actually feel like, wow, maybe we're doing something here. But he said, who knew? We're winning this year. And the look in his eye was that this is a total surprise season for him. And he's an octogenarian. It's not like he's interested in what's happening in 5 years. He was super excited at the possibility. So I think that you add those things up, and I think they're going to hang on and want to buy because to him, he was surrounded with family who were all so excited because they were thinking they were going to lose 90, and now they're thinking they could win 90. And for them, they're doing it.
And David, you know this too. The chance to win, the opportunity is rare. Just because you're good this year doesn't mean you'll be good next year. And when that opportunity arises, and I often have problems with teams where they don't grab the opportunity. When that opportunity arises, you had better go for it. You had better try because who knows what happens next year. Your best pitcher might get hurt. All kinds of things might happen. And Bill DeWitt has been in baseball long enough to recognize that, yes, that's the reality of the situation.
You talk about that and going for it. Obviously, during the offseason, there was talk of trading Nolan Arenado, and it didn't end up happening. But I think who you could be talking about is one of our favorite teams together, the Baltimore Orioles, who the first time I ever met you was way before I got into baseball in as it related to the Orioles and selling to Angelos, which seems like 100 years ago. Bill DeWitt was in that room, by the way. That's funny how the world works. Are the Orioles an example where you're disappointed, not just out of your love for them, but reality that they missed an opportunity and now it looks as though this window of getting overperformance by young players to their contract is over now?
Well, a couple things here. The time you're talking about when we were together in a courtroom was the auction to sell the Orioles in bankruptcy court. And for those who might not be aware of this, since it happened, I don't know, 32 years ago,
That's
it was
unreal.
your stepfather, Jeffrey Loria, on one side. And at the start of that day, Bill DeWitt, Larry Lucchino, and Peter Angelos were all aligned. And actually, they bought the team together. They won the bidding, and then DeWitt and Lucchino gradually broke off, and it became Angelos's team. So that was quite a day. But to ask or to answer your question, first of all, I have no particular love for the Baltimore Orioles or any other team. I
I didn't
did
mean to say you were not neutral. Sorry.
No, I did work in Baltimore for many years, so I have a good working knowledge of that team. But they are a team that has been immensely disappointing, immensely. And they're unquestionably going to be a seller, in my opinion. I think that one we can declare now. They have played a little bit better in the last 10 days or so. And I know that they don't want to make a decision just yet. I get it. They want to see where their playoff odds are on July 25th. But it's going to be really difficult for them unless they start just tearing it up. And they might. They've got more players coming off the injured list soon, O'Neill and Westberg and Sanchez. But I see them as a seller. And they're going to be, if they are a seller, probably an extensive seller. They have a number of interesting players. Zach Eflin, Tomoyuki Sugano, Bautista, the relief pitcher, Felix Bautista. They have some others as well. So yeah, I think they're going to sell. I think they could be the team that actually controls the deadline to some extent, if any team can. And it's hugely disappointing because the next question is, okay, you've sold, you've collected maybe more prospects. What next? Because the clock is ticking on Gunnar and on Adley Rushman and your other young players. And at some point, you got to get better again before it all has to fade away.
And don't forget, you've got a new owner there. And
Yes.
so they may be a serious candidate to be buyers and sellers. I was thinking about what you do as a new owner is you don't want to indicate to your fans like, all right, this window closed, welcome to baseball. So you could be smart and they've got the front office with maybe the chance to do that. that they could be a team that you should look for to do both. I was
That's
thinking
a
about
great
that for
point.
them.
That is a great point because I agree with you. New owner changes the dynamic, and also they can't simply concede. They can't go back to where they were. Not that they are going back to where they were a few years back, but they need to keep pushing forward. So maybe they're the type of team that trades, I don't know, Zach Eflin for a young pitcher or a younger position player who is major league ready or in the majors already. Maybe it's someone they identify as undervalued at the time who they can build up. Who knows? But yes, they need to add as well as subtract.
I want to end. Thank you so much for your time, by the way. I want to talk about the CBA. We're going to be talking a lot about this over the next, it's already started, which is always frustrating for us as executives that it's written about a year in advance. But
Well, it's the executives driving the conversation here.
well, by the way, can you imagine if Bud Selig, side note, Coca, sorry, if Bud Selig were commissioner and he had owners, we were told we would forget letters. He would call us and say, "You may not, if you open your mouth, you're finished." And he'd swear while drinking Diet Cokes. But the number of owners who are talking publicly right now, I had not seen that before in my career.
It's funny you mention that because I mentioned to one of my colleagues at the Athletic that the drum beats for the next stoppage started earlier this time than they have in my memory. And I've been doing this since 87 when there was a work stoppage every 3 or 4 years. I don't know why it's like this, but it seems like the owner's thirst for a salary cap has never been greater. And maybe I'm a victim of recency bias here because that thirst has always been there. But it seems like now there is a percentage of owners that are willing to shut down the sport to get what they want. To me, it's ill-conceived in the mildest possible term I could use, ill-conceived. I could use a lot of other terms. $12 billion industry, why would you want to shut it down? You're not the NFL. You're not coming back so quickly in the eyes of the public. But all that said, to answer your question, yes, it has started earlier. I am concerned about where this is going because again, there is a segment of owners who want this badly and want it maybe badly enough to shut down the sport.
All you need is eight. I remind the audience, all you need is a block of eight. And are you willing to say, because I've been out in front of this, I'm guaranteeing a lockout at the end of 26. Whether or not there's missed games, I'm going to hold off on that. But are you as certain as I am about that?
Oh, pretty much, yes. And I'm certain about it because the commissioner has already said in an article by Evan Drellick that a lockout can be a very useful thing.
He did
If
that
that's
for the
your
last
belief,
CBA.
if that's your belief, we're having a lockout.
The question is, will there be enough owners to allow for missed games? And what we had when I was around, we wanted obviously a way to help the economic disparity and the payroll disparity, but we never had eight. And so it was never a real discussion that concerned Commissioner Selig or Rob, for that matter, when he was running labor, because we could never put the group together. And you could come up with eight teams pretty easily right now. And so what will be interesting to me is if it happens, but we're going to find out.
We are going to find out. And one dynamic here that maybe is worth mentioning is if you have a salary cap, you're also going to have a salary floor. And there might be some lower revenue teams, small market teams that don't want a salary floor. That adds to the complexity of this for Manfred in trying to build a proper block of votes to get this thing done, if that is what he wants.
We were always fine with the floor as long as it was funded.
Of course.
Ken, thank you for your time today. Went over. I didn't mean to keep you for 3 minutes longer than I told you, but thank you for doing this. And I hope we can do it again as the season unravels.
My pleasure, David. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, Ken.
You too.